The music, the costumes, the hair. There's only one ABBA. And after decades of going their own way,
The music, the costumes, the unforgettable harmonies, there's truly only one ABBA. For decades, their songs have filled dance floors, lifted spirits, and become the soundtrack of countless lives. Tracks like Dancing Queen and Mamma Mia aren't just pop songs. They're timeless cultural touchstones. And at the very heart of this phenomenon was Benny Andersson, the quiet yet brilliant composer who gave the world melodies that never seemed to fade. But while the glitter, chart-topping hits, and international stardom painted the image of a perfect life, the truth behind the scenes was far more complex. ABBA's story wasn't only about success. It was also about heartbreak, sacrifices, and personal struggles that fans never fully saw. Benny, often the reserved genius in the background, carried his own burdens, trials that tested him both as an artist and as a person. For decades, he chose silence, allowing his music to speak louder than his personal truths. He avoided scandal, rarely sought the spotlight outside of his craft, and kept most of his private battles away from the public eye. Yet now, at 78, Benny Andersson has finally opened up about his life, about ABBA, about love, loss, and the price of fame. This is the story of a boy from Stockholm who grew up with an accordion in his hands, found world fame with three others, and built a legacy that continues to inspire new generations. But it's also the story of heartbreak, of a man learning to balance music with personal happiness, and of confessions long left unsaid. So join us as we take a closer look at Benny's journey, his early steps in music, the rise to fame, the golden ABBA years, the struggles that followed, and the truths he's finally shared with the world. Benny Andersson was born Goran Bror, Benny Andersson, on December 16, 1946, in the Vasastan district of Stockholm, Sweden. His father, Gosta, worked as a civil engineer, while his mother, Layla, dedicated herself to raising the family. Benny wasn't an only child. He grew up with a younger sister, Eva-Lise, born 2 years later in 1948. From the beginning, music wasn't just a pastime in the Andersson household, it was a tradition. Both Benny's father and grandfather, Ephraim, played the accordion. Family gatherings often turned into impromptu jam sessions, and it wasn't long before little Benny became mesmerized by the sound of music surrounding him. At the age of 6, his father and grandfather gifted him his very own accordion. It was more than just an instrument. It was a key to another world, a spark that ignited a lifelong passion. Those early days were filled with Swedish folk tunes, Schlager music, and traditional songs, but Benny's tastes didn't stop there. His first records reflected a curiosity for all kinds of music. He owned Du Bist music by Catarina Valente and, like countless others his age, he couldn't resist the raw energy of Elvis Presley's jailhouse rock. What fascinated him most, however, was not always the main hit, but the details. The flip side, Treat Me Nice, caught his attention because of its piano-driven melody. It was an early clue that keys, not strings, would be his lifelong instrument. By the age of 10, Benny had his own piano at home. Unlike many children, he didn't need formal lessons to feel at home with the keys. He taught himself, driven by a deep fascination and natural ability. School, on the other hand, never held his interest for long. By 15, restless and eager, Benny left school behind to chase his real love, performing music. He soon began appearing in youth clubs, playing whatever songs would get the audience moving. It was during this period that he met his first girlfriend, Christina Grönvall. Their relationship was more than a teenage romance. It was a partnership that would shape his early adult life. Together they had 2 children, Peter, born in 1963, and Helene, born in 1965. With Christina, Benny also took his first professional steps in music. They joined a group called Elverkets Spelmanslag, the Electricians folk band, a playful nod to their electrified instruments. performing light-hearted songs like Baby Elephant Walk. The group was more about fun than fame. But for Benny, it was the start of something bigger. He was experimenting, writing his first songs, and slowly carving a path that would soon take him into Sweden's booming pop scene. In October 1964, Benny's career took a dramatic leap when he joined the pop band the Hep Stars as their keyboardist. Within just a few months, everything changed. By March 1965, the band had scored a breakout hit with their version of Cadillac. Almost overnight, the Hep Stars transformed into one of Sweden's most popular pop groups. For Benny, this wasn't just about playing music. It was about becoming a national teen idol. With his youthful charm and undeniable musical ability, he quickly became one of the band's most recognized faces. Yet what made him stand out wasn't only his image, it was his songwriting. Initially, the Hep Stars leaned heavily on cover versions of international hits, but Benny soon started composing original material for the group. His early compositions turned into major successes. Songs like No Response, Sunny Girl, Wedding, and Consolation showcased his knack for melody and emotional resonance. They weren't just catchy, they carried depth, a sense of storytelling through music. Sunny Girl, in particular, became a classic, demonstrating that Benny had something beyond pop instinct. He had artistry. As the Hep Stars continued to rise, Benny's personal life was evolving too. His relationship with Christina, the mother of his 2 children, was under strain. The demands of fame, constant touring, and his growing focus on music put pressure on their partnership. Eventually, their relationship would come to an end, leaving Benny with both family responsibilities and the drive to push further into music. In June 1966, fate intervened when Benny met Björn Ulvaeus, a member of another Swedish group called the Hootenanny Singers. Their connection was immediate and transformative. The two bonded not only over music, but over the idea that they could create something greater together. That same year, they wrote their first song, Isn't It Easy to Say, which was later recorded by the Hep Stars. This collaboration marked the beginning of one of pop music's most enduring partnerships. Benny's melodic sense and keyboard mastery meshed perfectly with Björn's lyrical touch and guitar-driven style. Together, they began laying the foundation for what would eventually become ABBA. At the same time, Benny was expanding his creative horizons. Alongside songwriter Lasse Berghagen, he co-wrote several songs, including Hedge Clown, which took second place in the 1969 Melodifestivalen, the national competition that determined Sweden's Eurovision entry. Although they didn't win, the exposure further solidified Benny's reputation as one of Sweden's brightest young songwriters. '69 also proved life-changing in another way. During that year's Melodifestivalen, Benny met Annie Frid Lyngstad, a talented singer who had just launched her solo career. The chemistry between them was immediate, both personally and musically. Around the same time, Björn met another rising star, Agnetha Fältskog. These relationships didn't just shape their personal lives, they became the bedrock of what would soon become one of the most famous bands in the world. By the late 1960s, Benny and Björn were no longer just promising young musicians, they were a team. Their songwriting collaborations were producing hits for other Swedish artists, and they were starting to experiment with combining their talents with those of Annie Frid and Agnetha. One of their early successes as a songwriting team came in 1969, with Ljuva Sextiotal for Brita Borg and Spelleman for the Hep Stars. But the real magic was happening in their personal circles. Benny, now deeply involved with Annie Frid, found himself constantly collaborating with her in the studio. He produced her 1969 single Peter Pan and later worked on her debut album Frida in 1971. Meanwhile, Agnetha was starring in Sweden's production of Jesus Christ Superstar in 1972, while Björn continued touring with his band. Yet despite their separate careers, the four often came together for informal music sessions. Their voices blended in a way that was unmistakable. Agnetha's clear soprano paired with Frida's deep contralto created a sound that Benny and Björn knew could define something much larger. Their first unofficial performance as a quartet came in April 1970 during a holiday trip to Cyprus. What began as casual singing on a beach quickly turned into an impromptu concert for United Nations soldiers stationed there. The chemistry between the four was undeniable, and slowly, the idea of forming a group began to take shape. In 1970, Benny and Björn recorded their first joint album, Laika, Happiness, with Agnetha and Frida providing backing vocals. Though modest in success, it marked the beginning of a unique collaboration. Later that year, the four launched a cabaret act called Festfolk, meaning party people or engaged couples. Their debut on November 1, 1970 in Gothenburg, however, didn't go as planned. Critics dismissed the show as uninspired, except for one performance, Hey Gamla Man, Hello Old Man, which struck a chord with audiences. The song became their first chart hit together, reaching number 5 and staying on Svensktoppen, Sweden's top chart, for 15 weeks. By 1971, their collaborations became more frequent. Benny and Björn released singles such as Tänk om jorden vore ung, Imagine if the Earth Were Young, with Agnetha and Frida's harmonies playing a larger role. Their manager, Stig Andersson, head of Polar Music, firmly believed that Benny and Björn had the potential to achieve international success. He pushed them to keep writing and to enter competitions. In 1972, they entered Melodifestivalen with Säg det med en sång, Say It With a Song. Although they only finished third, the exposure gave them momentum. Around the same time, one of their songs, She's My Kind of Girl, unexpectedly charted in Japan, showing that their appeal could stretch beyond Sweden's borders. But it was in June 1972 that things really began to shift. They released People Need Love, credited to Björn and Benny, Agnetha and Frida. The song only reached number 17 in Sweden, but it marked a crucial turning point. It was the first time all four voices were officially featured together on record. It was the birth of the sound that would soon conquer the world. The year 1973 was pivotal. The group, still going by the long and cumbersome name Björn and Benny, Agnetha and Annie Frid, entered Melodifestivalen with a song called Ring Ring. Produced with a distinctive wall of sound technique by Michael B. Trito and given English lyrics by Neil Sedaka and Phil Cody, the song seemed destined to win. To everyone's surprise, it only finished third, but despite losing the competition, Ring Ring was a hit. The song and its accompanying album took off in several European countries, even reaching South Africa. Suddenly, the four Swedish singers were being noticed, not just at home, but abroad. It was clear that they had something fresh, something different. Around this time, manager Stig Andersson decided that the group needed a proper name. Long names weren't marketable, especially internationally. He came up with ABBA, an acronym formed from the first initials of each member's name, Agnetha, Björn, Benny, and Annie Frid. Coincidentally, ABBA was also the name of a Swedish fish canning company, but after some negotiations, the band was allowed to use it. By late 1973, the name ABBA was appearing on studio paperwork, and soon, on records around the world. Their first major chance to prove themselves came in 1974, when they entered Melodifestivalen once again, this time with a song called Waterloo. Unlike Ring Ring, which had been charming but perhaps too safe, Waterloo was bold, upbeat, and influenced by the glam rock dominating the UK charts. This time, the gamble paid off. ABBA won the Swedish selection, earning the right to represent Sweden at the Eurovision Song Contest in Brighton, England. On April 6, 1974, the four walked onto the Eurovision stage in flamboyant costumes, ready to make history. When the opening chords of Waterloo began, the audience couldn't help but be swept up in its energy. ABBA's performance was electric, and by the end of the night, they had won. For the first time, Sweden had claimed victory at Eurovision. Waterloo didn't just win the contest, it exploded across Europe. It hit #1 in 9 countries and even reached the US top 10, peaking at #6. ABBA had arrived on the global stage. The following singles tested their staying power. Honey Honey did well in parts of Europe, though it didn't match Waterloo's impact. In the UK, their label re-released Ring Ring instead. And some skeptics wondered if ABBA might be a one-hit wonder. But in 1975, ABBA began to silence the doubters. Their self-titled album included SOS and Mamma Mia, both of which became massive hits, especially in Europe and Australia. In Australia, Countdown, a popular TV show, helped propel Mamma Mia to #1, where it stayed for 10 weeks. The Australian public's love affair with ABBA would soon become legendary. By the mid-1970s, ABBA had gone from quirky Eurovision winners to one of the most exciting pop groups in the world. From 1975 onward, ABBA was unstoppable. Their unique blend of catchy melodies, layered harmonies, and polished production quickly turned them into global icons. But it wasn't just the music. Their visual style, with glamorous outfits and larger-than-life performances, made them unforgettable. In 1976, ABBA released Greatest Hits, their first UK #1 album. It included a brand new track, Fernando, which became one of their most successful singles ever. The song topped charts in at least 13 countries and sold over 10 million copies worldwide. Its lush, emotional ballad style showed ABBA's range. They could do more than upbeat pop. They could move listeners to tears. That same year, ABBA released Arrival, the album that truly cemented their global dominance. It featured Money, 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 Knowing Me, Knowing You, and their most famous song of all, Dancing Queen. Released in August 1976, Dancing Queen became a phenomenon. It topped the charts in more than a dozen countries, including the United States, where it became ABBA's only #1 hit. The song's soaring melody and joyful energy made it an anthem of the disco era, one that remains iconic to this day. In January 1977, ABBA launched their first major tour, beginning in Norway and then moving through Europe before heading to Australia. There, they were greeted like royalty. Fans lined the streets, concerts sold out within hours, and hysteria rivaled Beatlemania. Despite challenges like heavy rain and even a bomb scare in Perth, the shows were electrifying. The experience was later captured in ABBA, the movie, which offered fans a behind-the-scenes look at the band at the height of their fame. By the end of 1977, they released ABBA, the album alongside the film. Songs like Take a Chance on Me and The Name of the Game kept the hits coming, while deeper tracks like Eagle showed a more ambitious side of their songwriting. In 1979, ABBA released Voulez-Vous, recorded partly in Miami's famous Criteria Studios. With tracks like Chiquitita, I Have a Dream, and Does Your Mother Know, the album reflected disco influences but also kept ABBA's signature pop sound alive. While not every single topped the charts, in the UK they found success across Europe and Latin America. Chiquitita was especially meaningful, as the band donated proceeds to UNICEF, showing their willingness to use fame for good. That same year, ABBA released Greatest Hits Vol. 2, featuring Gimme Gimme Gimme, A Man After Midnight. The single became another international smash and remains a fan favorite. September 1979 saw ABBA embark on their most ambitious tour yet, ABBA The Tour. They played sold-out arenas across North America, a market that had often been difficult for European acts to conquer. In the U.S., they performed in major cities like New York, Boston, and Los Angeles, where audiences finally embraced them with the same enthusiasm seen elsewhere. The tour then returned to Europe, including a legendary 6-night run at London's Wembley Arena. In 1980, they traveled to Japan for 11 sold-out concerts. It would be their final major tour. But at the time, no one suspected the end was near. ABBA had conquered the world. They had sold millions of albums, filled stadiums, and become one of the most recognizable acts in history. Yet beneath the dazzling success, personal tensions and cracks in their seemingly perfect image were beginning to show. While ABBA's public image was polished and joyful, behind the scenes, the pressures of fame were taking a toll. The most visible struggles were within their personal relationships. Both couples, Benny and Annie Fried and Björn and Agnetha, found it increasingly difficult to balance their marriages with the demands of international superstardom. In 1979, Björn and Agnetha announced their divorce. Though they tried to keep the split amicable, the emotional strain was undeniable. Songs like The Winner Takes It All, released in 1980, seemed to reflect their heartbreak, with Agnetha delivering one of the most powerful vocal performances of her career. Meanwhile, Benny and Annie Fried's relationship also began to deteriorate. Despite their deep musical bond, the constant touring, media pressure, and personal differences eventually drove them apart. They divorced in 1981, leaving the band without its two central romantic partnerships. These personal struggles inevitably affected the group's dynamics. Recording sessions became more difficult, and the once playful atmosphere gave way to tension. Yet, ironically, some of ABBA's most emotionally resonant songs came from this period, reflecting the heartache the members were experiencing. Tracks like One of Us and When All Is Said and Done captured the bittersweet reality of love lost and dreams fading. Beyond relationships, the sheer weight of global fame also became exhausting. ABBA had been working non-stop for nearly a decade, recording, touring, and promoting without pause. The pressure to constantly produce hits, combined with the intense scrutiny of the public eye, left little room for rest or normalcy. Financial strains also emerged. The group's enormous earnings were tied up in various investments, some of which didn't go as planned. While they never faced ruin, the stress of managing fame and fortune added another layer of difficulty. For Benny, these years were particularly challenging. Balancing his role as a father, his partnership with Björn, his divorce, and the future of the band left him emotionally drained. Yet through it all, he continued to do what he always had: let the music speak. By the early 1980s, ABBA's momentum had slowed. Their final studio album, The Visitors, 1981, was darker and more introspective than their previous work. Songs like Slipping Through My Fingers and the title track reflected themes of change, distance, and endings. Though critically praised, it was clear the group had reached a crossroads. In 1982, ABBA quietly stepped away from the spotlight. Unlike other bands, there was no dramatic breakup announcement, no farewell tour. They simply stopped recording together, leaving fans to wonder if they'd ever return. For Benny, life after ABBA was far from empty. He continued his partnership with Björn, turning their talents toward new horizons. The two composed musicals like Chess in 1984, which included the global hit One Night in Bangkok. Their collaboration proved that their songwriting magic extended beyond ABBA's pop sound. Benny also explored Swedish folk music, returning to the sounds of his childhood. He formed the Benny Andersson Orchestra, BAO, which became highly popular in Sweden. With BAO, he blended traditional tunes with modern arrangements, showcasing his deep respect for his roots. On a personal level, Benny found happiness again. In 1981, he married Swedish TV presenter Mona Nurklit, and together they had a son, Ludwig, born in 1982. The stability of this marriage provided Benny with the balance he had long craved. Over the decades, ABBA's legacy only grew stronger. Tribute bands, stage musicals like Mamma Mia, and eventually blockbuster films introduced their music to new generations. Benny, though often reserved about the spotlight, played a central role in ensuring the music remained authentic and true to its origins. Now at 78, Benny Andersson has finally spoken more openly about his journey. For decades, he allowed the music to tell the story, but in recent interviews, he has shared the truths behind the melodies. He admitted that ABBA's breakup was painful, not just professionally, but personally. The end of the marriages, the pressure of fame, and the weight of expectation left scars that took years to heal. Yet he also reflected with gratitude. Benny acknowledged that without those very struggles, some of ABBA's most powerful songs might never have been written. Pain, he said, often led to creativity, and in the end, the music outlived the heartache. Today, Benny continues to play music, often with his orchestra, and he remains deeply involved in projects celebrating ABBA's legacy. The group's surprising 2021 reunion album, Voyage, proved that even decades later, their voices and Benny's melodies could capture the world's imagination once again. Looking back, Benny confessed that he never expected ABBA's music to last as long as it has. Yet as he watches younger generations sing along to Dancing Queen and Mamma Mia, he understands that the songs have become bigger than the people who created them. For Benny Andersson, the journey has been one of triumph and trial, of love and loss, of silence and confession. And though the man himself may one day fade, the music he helped create will continue to dance across time, forever. Even after all these years, Benny Andersson's influence reaches far beyond the decades when ABBA ruled the charts. The music he created with Björn, Agnetha, and Annie Fried has become a permanent part of global culture. From school dances to weddings, from sports arenas to Hollywood blockbusters, ABBA's songs continue to echo through every corner of the world. The stage musical Mamma Mia, which premiered in London in 1999, was a turning point in preserving ABBA's legacy. Initially, Benny wasn't sure if audiences would embrace a full-length show built entirely around their songs.